Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into a fundamental principle in contract law, privity of contract. This is one of those legal doctrines that has significant implications, especially when it comes to who can enforce a contract. We will explore privity of contract under common law, discuss Singapore's stance and relevant legislation, and go through 3 practical examples to illustrate the concept. So whether you're studying law, running a business, or just curious about contract law, let's get into it. Privity of contract is a cornerstone principle of common law. The basic idea is that a contract is a private agreement between the parties who made it, and only they have rights to obligations under that contract. In simple terms, if you are not a party to a contract, you generally cannot enforce it or be bound by it. The principle of privity is rooted in 2 main ideas: contractual autonomy and reciprocity. When 2 parties enter into a contract, it's because they have negotiated terms and agreed to a reciprocal exchange. One party provides something of value in exchange for something from the other. This mutual exchange is central to the notion of privity. Why is this important? Well, it protects parties from unintended obligations to unrelated third parties, preserving the sanctity of the agreement. However, privity also has its limitations, especially in situations where a third party might benefit from a contract but has no right to enforce it. While privity of contract has deep roots in common law, many jurisdictions, including Singapore, have developed exceptions to address its limitations. In Singapore, the key legislation that modifies the privity rule is the Contracts Rights of Third Parties Act. This act was introduced to address the strictness of the privity doctrine, particularly in cases where a third party was intended to benefit from a contract, but cannot enforce it under traditional common law principles. Under the Contract Rights of Third Parties Act, third parties can enforce a contract if the contract expressly allows it, or if the contract terms clearly indicate an intention to benefit them. However, this is not an automatic right. The contract must specify or imply the third party's right to enforce it. If the contract does so, the third party gains enforceable rights under the Contracts Rights of Third Parties Act, as if they were a direct party to the agreement. This brings more flexibility to contract law in Singapore and aligns with a more modern, commercially minded approach. To make this concept clearer, let's go through 3 examples that illustrate how privity of contract works and how the Contracts Rights of Third Parties Act come into play. Imagine a situation where Alice hires Bob, who is a contractor, to renovate her apartment. Alice and Bob are the only parties to the contract. Bob finishes the renovations, but does a very bad job, leaving Alice's family unhappy. Alice's family members, however, cannot sue Bob directly because they are not parties to the contract for renovation. Only Alice is. Under the contract, Bob's obligation is solely to Alice, not to her family members. This is the traditional privity rule in action. Now, my second example. Imagine that Alice contracts with an insurance company to provide health insurance coverage for her mother, Clara. The contract specifically names Clara as a third-party beneficiary with rights under the policy. So under the Contracts Rights of Third Parties Act, Clara can directly enforce her rights under this insurance contract, even though she was not a party to the original agreement. In this case, the Act overrides the traditional privity rule, allowing Clara to benefit and to enforce her rights. Let's consider a slightly different scenario. Imagine a construction company, BuildCo, hires a subcontractor, PaintCo, to handle all the painting in a new office building for a tenant, TechCo. While TechCo is not a party to the contract between BuildCo and PaintCo, they may have indirect benefit from PaintCo's performance. However, if TechCo has no express rights under the Contracts Rights of Third Parties Act, they wouldn't be able to enforce any contractual terms against PaintCo. This demonstrates the limits of third-party rights. Without specific mention in the contract by name, as a member of a class, or as answering a particular description, a third party, even if they benefit from the agreement, cannot enforce it under the Act. The doctrine of privity of contract continues to be a foundational part of contract law, but Singapore's Contracts Rights of Third Parties Act reflects a pragmatic approach. By allowing third parties to enforce contractual rights in certain situations, Singapore's legal framework acknowledges the complexities of modern contracts, where third-party beneficiaries are increasingly common. The Act brings Singapore closer to other common law jurisdictions, such as the United Kingdom, that have also enacted similar statutes. However, it's worth noting that privity remains an important baseline. The Act doesn't abolish privity, but rather creates specific exceptions. Contracts are still fundamentally private agreements, and parties must make it clear if they intend to grant rights to third parties. From a legal standpoint, the Act provides flexibility, especially in commercial contexts. For businesses, it's an important tool, allowing clients, customers, or beneficiaries to gain enforceable rights if they are explicitly included in the contract. For the general public, understanding the Act can help when entering into contracts that might involve or benefit family members, dependents, or others. Knowing the conditions under which third parties can enforce rights is invaluable in navigating these situations. To sum up, privity of contract is an essential rule in common law, designed to protect contractual autonomy and reciprocity. But as we have seen, the Act modernizes this principle by allowing certain third parties to enforce contracts when expressly or impliedly allowed. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.